quotations last year, which were very, very difficult, almost impossible. And if they came very, very late. But maybe if we work on it together, and if the manufacturers work with their partners from the neighboring countries and with the government to allow imports quicker in case of need, then that could be a good thing to do. Have a forum to discuss that, which we've not identified any forum to discuss that yet. So I don't know whether there's something that you guys would like to share on that.
I think from the supply point of view, we also trying to do the same to have maybe not from one location to dispatch products and look for opportunity as well in terms of crisis where can be sourced from our sister company and so on. But I think the main constraint which I think can be solved is I think the regulation. And sometimes some product cannot import easily. You need to get the government to approve. And sometimes when the volume uplift in the neighboring country, I mean, we have to admit that the Thai market is a large market. And if you are really completely down, you cannot have the extra capacity elsewhere in the region that can feed Thailand 100%. Yeah, because if you do that, that means we have underutilization big time in the other country, and that is I think the big constraint we face as well. So the best is to protect our property and have multiple locations to dispatch the product, and that's the best we can do.
We had the good fortune of having a dry manufacturing site and a dry central distribution center, and yet it was still incredibly difficult to be able to get orders transferred in the right way, by store with the right addresses, the right tax information so you could ship the orders. And I think we need as an industry to do the best job we can to make sure that all that information is in place before we get to the next crisis, because we lost probably 2 weeks with full warehouses with inability to ship things where it could have been, and moving much lost the ability to move as fast as we could. So I think that's one of the main things is just leveraging this time now before the storm, figuratively, to close the gaps that we all saw, because we've all, I'm sure, done lessons learned, and have all those chinks in the armor been fixed.
I think the other lesson that I take from the floods, although I was lucky enough not to be here, is just how incredibly disruptive they were. Now that sounds like it's stating the obvious, but the length of time it's taken businesses to recover. I mean, I would say about Big C, we are still recovering today.
We are.
6 months after the flood, you'd have to say, when did the flood finish? December? 6, 7 months later, we are still recovering. We have large numbers of vendors who are desperately short of raw materials. So I think the traditional approach to looking at disasters like this and evaluating how much can we afford to invest, I think having lived through the flood, the cost of it to individual businesses and to us as an industry, and ultimately to our consumers, has been 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times more and for longer than anybody could have predicted. And I think when we look at what we're prepared to spend on preparation and on business continuity planning, that's very much a lesson we need to remember and not forget.
มีคำถามอีกไหมครับถามเป็นภาษาไทยก็ได้นะครับผมรับบริการแปลให้คำถามเชิญครับ
รบกวนถามเป็นภาษาไทยเดี๋ยวแปลนะคะก็คืออย่างนี้ค่ะเหตุการณ์ที่เกิดขึ้นเนี่ยกลยุทธ์ของทั้ง Big C แล้วก็ของ Lotus เนี่ยกลยุทธ์ต่อไปเนี่ยจะเป็นลักษณะ Direct to Store หรือว่าจะเป็น Direct to Hub หรือว่า Direct to DC เพื่อให้ผู้ประกอบการอย่างเราเนี่ยได้มีความรู้เพื่อจะได้ปรับตัวนะคะอยากทราบว่ากลยุทธ์ต่อไปเขาจะวางแผนยังไงในอีกปีหนึ่งหรือ2 ปีข้างหน้าค่ะ
ขอบคุณครับ Okay, I translate. Okay, she would like to know the approach you use if we have flood again this year. What will be your approach? Whether how you want to manage during the flood? Whether we will be direct to store again, or direct to hub or anything for both Tesco and Big C? Because as vendors, they would like to understand so they can prepare things in advance.
I think the answer to that is yes. It will be all of those things. I think the difference in terms of our preparation this year than last year, I think we will do much more work, we are doing much more work up front to try and make those plans at our individual vendor level. So vendors who have a national distribution network and very strong capability, then clearly direct to store is a good option as contingency for them. Other vendors who do not have such strong distribution networks, then they would have to flow through temporary facilities and contingency sites. But I think if you look at the size and scale of both our businesses, there is not going to be a one-size-fits-all. We have 2,500, 3,000 vendors to the business. And there will be a range of responses based on the capability of the vendor, the severity of the flood, the nature of the product. But the difference this year, I hope, and we've got a lot more work to do in Big C, is we need to make those plans and preparations up front at an individual vendor level.
Peter, you have anything
Yeah,
to add?
agree. That's a very, very good approach. Agreed up front, individually. I think that is exactly right. Because the capacity of each vendor is different in terms of, and then individually as each gets affected differently as well. So some vendors that we were very surprised were small vendors, and they were able to supply into most of our stores. Some big vendors, unfortunately, had their production or their distribution hit so badly they still today can't supply. So
ครับคำถามมีอีกไหมครับได้นะครับผมยินดีแปลให้โอเคOkay, there's the following follow-up question on this thing, whether how you see as a retailer, whether because all this supporting for vendors that they have to have additional costs in terms of logistic costs or sending the product, let's say sending to direct to store, how you see any support to the vendors, financial support, I think will be.
And we had very good experience with insurance. I think it's important to have a good insurance coverage for this, because if your insurance coverage is only for property damage or direct product damage, then you wouldn't be able to recover from that, because we wouldn't have any additional money. Quite the opposite, we lost profits as well. So we had relatively good insurance coverage, and we had instances where we were able to claim lost sales or increased expenses to sell. So I think if you were able to make an insurance like that, that would enable you then to do whatever you need to do to get your product over and get the insurance pay for it at the end. It's probably more expensive to, in the monthly payments, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I agree with that approach. I mean, I think the pain from the flood was shared by everybody. Certainly in the Big C business, it's had a very, very dramatic effect on us. And as I said earlier, it's still impacting us today.
Okay, any other question? คำถามอีกไหมครับยินดีนะครับข้างหลังยกมือได้นะผมเดินไปถึงได้ไม่ต้องเกรงใจ Okay, I'm afraid no more question, I think.
So once again, can we please have a round of applause for our distinguished guests, please? Thank you very much.